The hall was majestic. Arched ceilings towered above an audience dressed in polished suits and pressed blazers. Mahogany tables gleamed under the glow of antique chandeliers, and the seal of Harvard University stood proudly on the crimson velvet backdrop of the stage. The final round of the National Collegiate Debate Championship was about to begin. The hall was filled with anticipation and pride. Students and professors filled the seats. Ivy League debaters whispered final strategies to each other. Judges adjusted their spectacles and reviewed the score sheets. This was not merely a competition. It was a battlefield for intellect, eloquence, and legacy. He believed in dignity through labor. "You must build the life you want, Mia," he often told her. "No one will hand it to you." He never imagined that Elena, quiet and watchful, would one day walk into the hallowed halls of the Harvard Debating Union. She had not come as a student. At first, they underestimated her. But Elena had the mind of a tactician and the tongue of a poet. She spoke with logic and emotion balanced in harmony. Her words were not flowery, but piercing and true. She climbed through rounds, rising higher with every match. By the time the national championship came, her community team had made it to the top 4. She had come as part of a community initiative, Voices of the Unseen, a youth program aimed at integrating students from underserved communities into academic enrichment opportunities. Elena was left alone. The rules allowed solo participation, but it was rare, almost unheard of at that level. Back to the present, the moderator tapped the mic. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the final round of the National Collegiate Debate Championship. Today's motion: this House believes that wealth perpetuates injustice. Arguing for the proposition, representing the Community Initiative team, is Elena Martinez." And into that silence stepped a girl named Elena Martinez. She wore a navy blazer that did not quite fit her shoulders and black flats that had clearly seen better days. Her hair was tied back with a simple elastic band. She clutched a yellow folder tightly as if it were a shield. The murmurs began the moment she walked on stage. She looked out into the sea of doubt and prepared to speak. 12 months earlier, Elena's life had never been paved with ease. Her father, Miguel Martinez, had worked at Harvard for over 20 years as a janitor. He swept the floors of classrooms where the children of senators, CEOs, and scholars discussed the theories of law, philosophy, and economics. Elena had grown up surrounded by textbooks her father salvaged from recycling bins. While others dismissed the contents of those books as outdated or irrelevant, she devoured them with hunger. She taught herself Socratic logic from old debate manuals and read international relations journals in between shifts working at the local cafe. Who is that? She is not from any of the elite schools. She is the janitor's daughter, I heard. Laughter, not malicious but patronizing, rippled through parts of the crowd. Some students raised eyebrows, others smirked. They saw only a girl from a background that did not match the pedigree of Harvard-esque marble halls. But Elena stood straight. Every evening, her father returned from work, exhausted but smiling. Elena had stumbled upon it by accident when helping her father clean a bulletin board on campus. She applied. She was accepted. In the program, she debated students from elite prep schools. But her partner had fallen ill the day before the finals. Still, she chose to compete. There was a pause, then a polite applause. Elena approached the podium, hands steady despite the undercurrent of mockery. "I have heard students debate theories of justice while ignoring the janitors sweeping around their feet. I have seen privilege worn like armor and wielded like a sword." She began slowly. "When I was 12, I watched my father clean vomit off a classroom floor while the professor inside lectured about equality." There was a shift in the room, a rustle, a hesitation. Her voice was calm, controlled. And yet, here I stand not to accuse, but to illuminate. She raised her folder and began to structure her argument. While we applaud Miss Martinez's personal experience, anecdotal evidence does not define systems. She referenced psychological studies on inherited wealth and social mobility. Her speech was eloquent but grounded. With clarity and precision, she broke down economic disparity using historical data. When it came time for the opposing team, students from one of the most prestigious private universities in the country, they responded with well-prepared arguments, smooth rhetoric, and condescension disguised as logic. Debate teams requested her training. She cited academic sources most had overlooked. She took the trophy and placed it beside a framed photo of her mother, who had passed when she was a child. She had become the embodiment of the motion itself. She did not ramble. She dissected. She did not accuse. She revealed. One of them remarked she majored in political philosophy and minored in social justice advocacy. Elena responded in the rebuttal with grace. Anecdote is not the enemy of evidence, it is often its origin, she replied. She was invited to speak at universities across the country, but how to think critically, how to listen, and how to believe in the value of their voice. The first day of class, when her professor took attendance and paused at her name, Elena smiled and said, "Present," and ready. Systems are built by lives, and if you refuse to examine lives, then you do not understand the system. The judges leaned forward. The hall fell silent. No one laughed now. By the end of the round, Elena had not only defended her position, she had dismantled the premise that privilege equals intelligence. When the final scores were announced, her name stood alone at the top. Elena Martinez had won. The janitor's daughter had defeated Harvard. After the championship, and once again, the room fell silent, not out of shock this time, but out of reverence. The video of her speech went viral. The president of Harvard sent a personal letter praising her insight. She received scholarship offers, but Elena did not gloat. She returned home that night to her small apartment, where her father waited, eyes filled with tears. "You did it, Mia," he whispered. "No, Papi, we did it," she replied. Then she sat down at the kitchen table and began writing thank you letters to everyone who had supported her. 6 months later, Elena enrolled in Harvard as a freshman under a full scholarship, not because the university felt guilty, but because she had earned it undeniably and absolutely. Every Saturday, she led workshops for youth from underprivileged neighborhoods, teaching them not only how to speak. Epilogue Elena's story spread far beyond debate halls and ivy-covered campuses. It reached schools in South Africa, refugee camps in Syria, and rural towns in America where young girls watched her speech and whispered, "If she can, maybe I can too." Years later, when Elena stood at a global summit on educational equity, she began her address with the same words she used that day at Harvard. "When I was 12, I watched my father clean vomit off a classroom floor. Because the girl they had once laughed at had become a woman the world could no longer ignore."